Hey guys, this is Rich from Phoenix Furniture Restorations. Welcome back to my channel and yet another video. As you can see, this piece is a little bit different than what I normally would work on. This is actually a commission piece that I'm working on for a very special customer. And right off the bat, you don't really need me to point out all the damage because it's pretty much all over this piece. There are stains galore. There's about 1,001 scratches, especially on this one area right in the front, this little ledge right here. There's a ton of damage. I'm really hoping that that's going to come out with a really good sanding. Now this piece is extremely old. Talking to my customer, she dates this piece back to about the mid-1800s, and it very well may be, but I actually found something a little bit later on that's going to be able to date this piece back to around that time. And just taking a look inside here, you can see that this piece is completely painted inside, and I'm hoping that it's going to easily come off with some stripper. But the other concern I have is that this looks like it may be lead paint, and it's on the inside and the bottom as well. I don't know what it is about this paint, but something about the sheen of it, just the look of it, kind of just makes me think that this may be lead paint. And judging by the age of this piece, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But I guess we'll find out. So sit back, relax, and let's get into this piece. Now, normally I would start by removing all the hardware, but there really isn't much hardware on this piece, and this piece was so dirty that I just wanted to go in and start cleaning. I'm using MCS cleaner and degreaser just to get rid of all of the many decades of built up oils and grease and whatever else is on this piece. Another reason why I'm cleaning this piece is because there really isn't that much of a finish left on it. There's maybe a very tiny bit, but there really isn't much. It's almost basically down to the raw wood at this point, so I'm going to be sanding the finish off, or whatever remains of it. Normally I wouldn't sand a finish off, mostly because I mostly work with veneer, and luckily this piece is actually completely solid wood. There isn't any veneer anywhere. So in this case, sanding off what remains of the finish really isn't that big of a deal. But getting back to what I was saying, it's important to clean your pieces if you're going to sand your finish off, because number one, if there are any oils left on the piece, when you sand, it's going to gum up your sandpaper pretty quickly. And number two, if there's any dirt or anything basically left on the piece, you're going to be grinding all of that filth down into the wood grain, and it can really affect the way that your finish adheres. So it's very important if you're going to be sanding your finish off, just to make sure your piece is nice and clean. Now I'm going to be stripping this paint off inside, but I still am going to give it a very good cleaning. I know it kind of seems like a little bit of a contradiction, me cleaning this, if I'm just going to end up stripping all of this off anyway. But in order for the stripper to work effectively, you have to be working with a clean surface. I'm beginning now just to remove all the hardware, and this hardware is absolutely not original. The hinges actually may very well be, because they seem like they're very old, but this pull that I'm taking off right here definitely is not. They're definitely replacements. And I'm just going to take all this hardware and put it into a cup that I labeled for this piece, and I'm going to put it to the side for a little bit. And let the sanding begin. Now, there was a lot of damage to this piece. There was a ton of scratches. There were stains galore all over this piece. And because of that, I'm going to be starting with an 80 grit and slowly working my way up to a 220 grit. Now, this piece required a ton of sanding, so I kind of tried to edit it my best so that, you know, this video wasn't 90% sanding, but I tried to include the best shots. Now, this wood is actually called heart pine, and it really is a beautiful wood. I'm not really a big fan of pine, because pine tends to be kind of boring on its own, and it has that very yellow kind of look to it, that yellow color, which I'm not a fan of. But heart pine has a little bit of a different color to it. It's a little bit more of a brownish kind of amber color, not so much yellow. Heart pine is actually also very dense. It's not as soft as regular pine. It's made from the heartwood of old-growth longleaf pine trees and was mainly used in construction, shipbuilding, and flooring, and furniture, of course. Now, because of extensive logging, heart pine is actually pretty rare to come across. And I'm talking about antique heart pine, which is what this is made of. So I just think it is so cool that I'm able to work with this wood. Now, heart pine isn't an extinct species, but it was nearly logged to extinction in the 19th and early 20th century. Today's heart pine is exclusively sourced from reclaimed materials like old buildings and sunken river logs. And because of that, it actually is a pretty expensive wood. But anyway, let's get back to sanding. So as I mentioned before, I'm starting with an 80 grit, and that's mainly to get rid of all the scratches and gashes that are in this piece. Normally with pine, I would usually, when I start with an 80 grit, I would go from 80 to 100 to 120, 150, 180, and then 220 because it's such a soft wood. But because this is heart pine, which has a very similar density to oak, I'm going to be going from 80 to 120 to 180 and then to 220. And I'm just hand sanding this little area right here where there's a little bit of a routed section. Now, for anybody who's new to sanding, just a couple tips that I can provide would be, number one, you want to hold the sander flat, level with the surface that you're sanding. Two, you don't want to put too much pressure on the sander. You kind of want to let the weight of the sander do all the work for you. Three, you don't want to move too fast for the sander either. You want to move at a slow but consistent pace. Four, you want to make sure that you're climbing up through your grits correctly. Basically what I said before with starting with 80 grit, going to 120, then 180, and then 220. 5 is an obvious one, but it's just one that I wanted to throw in here. You want to make sure that you're following the grain of the wood. And lastly, you want to make sure that you're using PPE, which just stands for personal protective equipment. And as you could see, this piece was actually so tall that I had to get up on a ladder just to reach the top of it. This piece was like 7 feet tall. I'm just going to reach over and grab you guys really quickly because I just wanted to show you here that there are stains all over this piece, even on the top where you can't even reach. And I'm a little nervous because I'm not sure if oxalic acid is really going to get these stains out, but I'll talk more about that later when I use it. Right now, I'm going to start to tackle this paint, and since this piece is easily over 100 years old, I figured that a lead test would probably be a good idea. And you could buy these lead tests on Amazon for relatively cheap, and they're actually pretty easy to use. You just take one of these little Q-tip kind of looking things out. You want to dip the tip in some vinegar, and then you just rub the tip on the surface that you're testing, and you want to do that for about 30 seconds. If the test is positive for lead, it'll be a very dark pinkish purplish kind of a color. But if it's negative, it's going to stay this yellow color. And luckily this paint is negative for lead. But there's also a layer of white paint underneath the blue paint that I haven't tested. So I'm just going to scrape that, test it, and immediately I saw the color change. And this paint is definitely positive for lead. So now what do I do? If your paint comes up positive for lead, don't panic. It's not a huge deal. You're just going to have to change your approach a little bit. When you're dealing with lead paint, you want to make sure that you're doing a wet removal. You don't want to do any kind of dry removal. You don't want to sand, you don't want to scrape. And that's because the only way that this lead is going to be dangerous to you is if it's airborne. So you really only have two options. You can either wet sand or you can use a chemical stripper. And I went with option 2, and I'm using Clean Strip Premium Stripper, which is my favorite chemical stripper to use. And I'm going to very carefully start removing this paint. Now the first round of stripper didn't get all the paint off, so I'm just going to come in with a second round of stripper and see if I can get any better results. Alright, so the second time around it didn't really take much off. There's still a lot of paint that's stuck in the grain of the wood. So I'm just going to strip off as much as I can, and then I'm going to probably come in with a nylon bristled brush and just scrub all the rest off. And I'm just going to pause here for 1 second because I had a little visitor that came into the shop today. I was literally on my hands and knees trying to get this paint off, and I heard the weirdest noise. And I turned around and this guy was just kind of sitting there staring at me. So I just took my camera and decided to give this little guy his 15 minutes of fame. I don't know why he wasn't afraid of me, honestly. He was just kind of hanging out and just exploring the shop a little bit. So I'll let you guys enjoy this very, very quick intermission with this little guy hopping around. He could have left anytime he wanted to. I mean, the door was wide open, so he could have just flown right out. But he hung out with me for, it was like 7 minutes. And there he goes. And just a little sneak peek of my backyard. Alright, back to scraping paint. And I don't know what it is about lead paint that makes it so difficult to scrape off, but every time I've dealt with lead paint, it's always so stubborn. Usually you have to put a couple layers of stripper on before you can get it all off. I just wanted to take a second just to remind everybody that if you're going to be using paint stripper, especially if you're working with lead paint, you want to make sure that you're really protecting yourself against the stripper and against the lead. I'm wearing butyl gloves and I'm also wearing a respirator just to, make sure that I don't breathe in any of this stuff because the fumes are pretty harsh. Alright, now for round 3. I'm coming in with more stripper and a nylon bristled brush, and I'm just scrubbing off the rest of this paint. And yes, it is extremely messy to do this. Now, to get rid of all of this gunk, I'm coming in with some acetone, and acetone is going to make it very easy to wipe up all of this residue. And I'm just going to do the same thing for the other 4 shelves. Now I started stripping the sides of the piece only to realize that there was only one layer of paint, which was the blue paint, and that did not contain lead. So what I can do now is I can come in with my sander and sand off the rest of that paint and not have to worry about getting any lead in my lungs. And I'm just removing this little decorative trim that's on the inside of the top shelves and putting it aside for later. Now they were nailed in, but they were kind of loose, so I was able to just pull them up with my hands and not have to worry about snapping them. All right, so as you can see, I got pretty much 95% of all the paint off, and the only thing that's left now is to remove all the finish. So I'm coming back in with that 80 grit, and I'm just going to begin sanding all that off. I'm just testing these doors for lead paint as well, and they came up positive, so I'm just going to give them the same treatment. Now, I don't have much space in my shop right now because I'm in the middle of actually organizing everything, so I have everything out everywhere, and I don't have much space to put these doors, so I just have it balancing on a chair right now. So just try not to judge me too much. And I just absolutely love when paint bubbles up like this from the stripper. It's so satisfying. And I have no idea what the heck kind of paint was underneath this, but I had to wait about 25 minutes for the stripper to fully seep in and loosen it up enough so that I could come in and scrub it off, which is pretty abnormal for this stripper. This is a pretty good stripper. Usually I only have to wait about 5 minutes, if that. But yeah, I don't know. Just something about this lead paint is just very different. And I'm just going to take this door and put it out in the hot sun so it can dry off, and begin sanding down the sides. And one thing I completely forgot to do was remove these back panels that are kind of in my way right here, and you'll see that I realized that in a second. And right here, you could literally see my confusion. I'm like, oh my god, did I really forget to do that? Alright, so this is actually pretty cool. I'm taking out all these nails so I can remove all these back panels here. And there are a couple newer nails that are in here, but most of the nails are actually these. And these nails are old. They have a square head, and you can see that they actually almost look like railroad spikes. And I did a bunch of research on Google, and I found that this particular style of nail was actually used mostly in the mid-1800s. So even though I don't know the exact year that this piece was made, I have a pretty good understanding of generally when this piece would have been made. And the fact that it dates back that far is just so cool to me. I'm really honored to be working on a piece like this. Alright, just removing all these back panels, and I can continue sanding down the sides. Now this footage is actually pretty sped up, but this took me a while to do. It probably took me, I'd say about 20 minutes each little section, and there were 8 sections, so, you know, it took over 2 hours. Patience is definitely something you need when refinishing these pieces. Now, I was actually thinking about cutting this whole section that's coming up out because it's basically the same thing as I showed you on the bottom with the stripping the paint off and everything, but I don't like to gloss over how much work goes into refinishing these pieces. Now, I'm obviously going to fast forward basically the majority of all of this, but I just wanted to show you that, it takes a lot of work, and if you're going to attempt to refinish pieces like this, be prepared. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of patience and perseverance. But if this is something that you truly love to do, you'll bear through it. I personally loved all the hard work that I put into all these pieces. I get such a sense of gratification at the end, and it's just really a great feeling. So, just something to keep in mind. And just like before, after I stripped everything off, I'm just coming in with that same 80 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to sand basically every square inch. Alright, so now that I have the entire piece stripped and sanded, I'm just going to whip up a little batch of oxalic acid. And for those who don't know, oxalic acid is basically just a wood bleach, and it comes in a powder crystal kind of a form. And I'm just mixing some into some hot water, and I apply. And since this piece has staining basically all over, I'm going to be covering this piece basically head to toe. Now, I'm not really sure what these stains are made of, and I know oxalic acid works very well on like dark water stains and things like that, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. I don't really have a great feeling about it, but I don't know, maybe I'll get lucky. Now, when it comes to oxalic acid, you want to make sure that you're applying it to the entire surface that your stain is on. You don't want to just apply it to the stain, because if you do, then the stain is the only thing that will lighten, and it's going to look kind of funny. So just make sure you're applying it to the whole surface. So all I'm doing is I'm just applying the oxalic acid. I'm going to let that completely dry, and then I'm going to come in and neutralize it and then rinse it off a couple times. Now, I applied 3 coats of the oxalic acid. So I applied my first coat, let it completely dry, rinsed it off with just water, let it completely dry again, and then came in and did that process 3 times. So now after the 3rd time, you can see that the oxalic acid is completely dry, so I need to neutralize it now. And to do that, I'm just going to I'm making actually a big batch of this. So I'm using 16 ounces of water, and I'm using 4 big tablespoons of baking soda. And I'm just going to submerge a shop towel, or a couple shop towels actually, in the baking soda solution. And then I'm just going to apply it to every single area that has oxalic acid on it. And you'll know it's working because it's going to bubble up and it's going to fizz kind of. And also you're going to notice something that looks like smoke coming off of it, which is just a chemical reaction that produces carbon dioxide. So there's no need to worry. It's not going to blow up. So I went over every single surface with the baking soda solution until there was no more reaction happening. After I was sure that every single surface was neutralized, I just came in with a soaking wet shop towel with water and I just rinsed it off 3 times. And it's very important that you make sure that you rinse it off because there's always going to be residue left over. And you want to make sure that you get all of the residue off before you continue. Now, the oxalic acid didn't really work at all, actually, so I'm going to try something a little bit different in a little bit. I'm going to try to throw everything I have at it, so to speak. But in the meantime, I'm just going to work on filling up all these holes and gouge marks and scratches, because there's a ton of them. So I'm just using some wood filler, and I'm just going to fill those up. Now, normally on a piece like this, I would normally keep some of the dings and marks and holes, not all of them, but a couple, just to leave some character and let this piece, kind of tell its story. But my customer wanted all of them filled up, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, there's a ton of holes on this piece, so I'm just going to show a couple clips of me filling up these holes. I'm not going to show a lot. But I just wanted to mention here, one mistake I actually made was filling up this line right here where the 2 boards connect. I probably shouldn't have done that just because those boards are going to expand and contract and breathe, so to speak, and that will probably end up cracking over time. And I don't know why I didn't notice that while I was doing it, or it didn't occur to me while I was doing it, but it's definitely something that I probably shouldn't have done. So I just wanted to mention that. Another thing I wanted to mention is that if you're using wood filler for the first time, you kind of want to make it proud, meaning that you want to make it above the surface, the level of the surface, so that when you sand, it'll be flush or level with the surface afterwards. I hope that made sense. I know some of these terms could be a little confusing for people who are just starting out. So after letting that wood filler dry for a couple hours, I came back in and started climbing up through my grits. And as you can see, I'm using the pencil trick again, which basically just shows me where I haven't sanded and helps me to get a very even sanding. So just wanted to take a second and just thank you guys for watching another video. You guys have been so kind and have given me a bunch of tips and tricks and helpful recommendations. So I just want you to know that I truly, truly appreciate it. I know I haven't gotten back to everybody in the comments, and I'm trying, I promise. But it's kind of hard for me to respond to all of them, being as busy as I am. So if you left me a comment asking me a question or anything like that, don't worry, I'll get back to you. It just may take me a little while. Also, I just wanted to mention, I have my new website up and running right now. It's a very basic website. I am still working on it and getting more features added to it. But if you guys needed to reach me, you can always go to my website, leave a message, or you can even just send me a message over email, which I'll have in the description. So I look forward to hearing from you guys. Now, I saved this part for, well, not last, but close to last, because I was very nervous stripping off this paint with these glass panels in the way. These glass panes were very, very old and probably very brittle, so I just made sure that I was very gentle with the stiff nylon brush when I was removing the paint, especially by the muntins, which are the thin strips of wood that separate each pane of glass. I made sure that I was very delicate. Now, all I did was I applied 1 coat of stripper. I let it sit for about 20 minutes because this lead paint is just a pain in the butt. I scrubbed off everything that I could, and then I came back with another coat of stripper and let that sit for another 20 minutes, and then came back in with that same nylon brush and just scrubbed off the rest. Now, if anybody was wondering, no, stripper will not damage the glass in any way, shape, or form. As long as it's just plain glass that you're working with, it should be totally fine to use stripper on it. After I scrubbed off as much of the lead paint as I possibly could, I came in with some acetone, which is perfectly safe for glass as well, and basically just flooded the door with it, using a paper towel to clean up all the residue. And after wiping up all the residue, I just brought it out in the sun to dry. And after drying for a little while, I just brought it back inside and began sanding. Now, I was a little nervous that the vibration from the sander would actually maybe fracture the glass, but luckily that didn't happen because I used some bubble wrap underneath a blanket just to absorb the vibration from the sander. Now, the vibration from the sander probably wouldn't have done anything to the glass anyway, but I would rather be safe than sorry. Now, when sanding the muntins, I just had to be very careful because if I tipped my sander to either side, I would have scratched the glass with the sandpaper. So, just taking my time and being very gentle as I go. So here I'm just going to begin taping off the glass so that when I sand these muntins, I don't scratch the glass with the sandpaper. And here, these muntins are actually all wood, so there's no problem with me sanding. I just went from 120 to 180 and then 220. But here, you'll see in a second, when I flip this around, these muntins are, there is a little sliver of wood in between, but the rest is actually what's called a window glaze putty. It's a putty mix that's used to basically kind of hold the glass in place. Now you can see in the middle, there is a little sliver of wood in between, but the rest is all that putty. So I'm going to sand that anyway, but the rest I'm going to have to do a little bit of color matching just to kind of color that window putty. Thinking about it now, what I can do is I'm thinking about masking off the wood and glass areas and painting the wood putty, giving it a picture frame effect. I think that would look pretty nice, actually. There was a little bit of damage on this section of wood right here, so I'm just using some Quickwood to fill that up. Quickwood is a wood epoxy, a two-part wood epoxy, and all you do is you break off the amount that you knead it together, and then you just shape it into whatever shape you're trying to make. I know you guys are probably wondering, why not just splice in a new piece of wood? Wouldn't it be easier just to splice in a new piece of wood? But the only thing is that I don't have any heart pine lying around. And heart pine is really the type of wood that I would have wanted to use. I normally would use a piece of regular pine, but regular pine is going to have a different color to heart pine. So I'm going to have to do some color matching and end up coloring over the wood anyway. So I just figured in this particular instance, using some Quickwood would just be a better way to fix this damage. But yes, if I did have heart pine, I would absolutely be splicing in some new wood. Now, while that Quickwood is drying, there were a couple spots where there were some holes and the paint got stuck in them, so I have to pick those out. And to do that, I'm just using my detailed scraper right here with the pointed edge. I could also use some dental tools that I have. Those also seem to work pretty well, but I just find that this particular scraper blade works extremely well for getting rid of all those tiny, tiny little paint specks. After I pick them all out, I'm just going to add some wood filler and color match them in just a little bit. I'm just showing a couple instances of me picking out this paint, but the little spots were all over the piece. So it took me a good hour and a half to get them all out. Okay, so I have to apologize here. I am not going to be able to show me sanding down the Quickwood, doing any of the color corrections, or me trying to do what I can to fix these stains. And that's because there was an error on the video file that I took that contained all of that stuff. So I'm sorry about that, but I will explain what I did in a little bit. But anyway, let me explain what I'm doing here. So my customer wanted me to use Bry Wax, which is a wax that I've never used before. It's a combination of beeswax and carnauba wax, and I've heard pretty good things about it, but I've just never tried it before. So with Bry Wax, normally you would use a rag or some steel wool just to rub it down into the wood grain. But my customer actually wanted me to use this little wax brush, which is actually doing a pretty good job, I have to admit. And all I'm doing is, in circular motions, I'm rubbing it down into the wood grain, and then I'm removing it almost immediately. I probably waited about a minute if I had to guess, but pretty much right after I applied it, I buffed it off. And since I haven't used this product before, I'm just testing it on this door right here, just because if anything goes wrong, I can easily just take some mineral spirits and take the wax off. Now you're going to notice here, as I apply the wax, it's darkening the wood and basically bringing out the natural color of the heart pine. But as it dries, it's going to lighten up, and that's because this wax doesn't actually penetrate into the wood. It sits more on the surface and doesn't absorb deeply into the wood fibers like other oils or waxes. So basically what I'm saying is that as I apply it, it's going to darken the wood a little bit, but as it dries, it's actually going to stay the color of the raw pine. And if you look closely, you can actually see the color change happening as the wax dries in this sped up shot. Now, if I was using Odie's oil or Odie's wood butter or something like that, this darker color that you're seeing the wood turn, it would actually stay that color. It wouldn't lighten up. Now, Bry Wax is used as a finish, but one important thing that I do want to mention is that you are going to have to reapply this stuff every 6 months to a year, as the finish will actually wear over time, especially on high traffic areas. Really quickly, I just wanted to go over what I did to try to get those stains out. And I used mineral spirits, acetone, oxalic acid, denatured alcohol, barkeeper's friend, bleach, and even a special concoction that my customer gave to me. And I have to admit, the stains did get a little bit better, but they're not perfect, and I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I just have to kind of put my tail between my legs and just accept that it is what it is. And I have to admit, I really should be wearing gloves here. And before I wax this door, I just have to take care of the muntins. And I just happen to have the perfect color in my little paint collection. It's like a very light and soft greenish brown. And I think it's going to go very well with the kind of vibe that this piece has. And I'm just using a tack cloth here just to get rid of any dust and debris that's been left over from sanding, because I definitely don't want that in my paint. And if anybody's wondering what type of paint this is a waterborne acrylic paint by Benjamin Moore. I'm not sure what color it is, because the label was actually painted over. It is a very durable paint though. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually made especially for furniture and cabinetry. And I did 2 coats of this paint. Now, when it comes to hardware for this piece, my customer actually bought new pulls. But as for the hinges, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some Brasso and I'm going to give these hinges a little bit of a Brasso bath. So I'm just covering each hinge head to toe in some Brasso, and I'm just going to let those hinges sit in the cup for about 15-20 minutes. And when they're ready, I'm just going to use this steel bristled brush that I have, and I'm just going to scrub as much of the tarnish off as I can. And as I was drying these hinges off, I realized that a couple of them were actually fractured, and one of them was completely broken. It actually fell apart in my hands. I actually really wanted to use these hinges just to keep everything original with this piece, but I have to remember that this piece is over 100 years old and not every aspect of it is going to survive, no matter how much TLC I give to it. But it's okay, I just went to Home Depot and picked up a couple new hinges. They are similar in color, so I think that'll go pretty well with the piece. So for the hardware, my customer gave me these pulls and they're wooden. I think they may be older wood. So I'm not sure if they're really going to take a stain too well. I'm just going to give them a very good sanding and I'm going to apply my stain. And for my stain, I'm using Espresso by Varathane. I believe it's an oil-based stain. And this stain is very, very close to the color that she wanted me to stain the pulls. And yeah, I'm just going to apply the stain. And I'm sorry, a couple of these shots are a little bit out of frame. And yeah, these actually came out pretty good. I'm happy with them. There's actually a very close color match to the picture that she sent me. After I'm done staining all this hardware, I'm just going to apply that same wax to them. And all that's left now is just attaching the hardware and reattaching the doors and the back panels that I sanded down. So just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching another video. This piece was definitely a challenge, but I think I did a pretty decent job. It was 100% a labor of love, and I can't wait to show my customer. Now, just a little PS here. This piece was a little bit too big for me to be able to move into my house and stage it properly. So I ended up just hanging a drop cloth in the middle of the shop. It's definitely not what I had in mind for a reveal, but it's unfortunately something that I had to do. This piece was just way too big to get into my house, unfortunately, so I really apologize if it's too distracting or if it just doesn't look that great. I really did try to make it look as good as I could. And also one more thing, you're going to notice on the back of the piece, the back panels, there's a bunch of spaces in between the panels, and that was the original look of this piece, but after speaking with my customer, she would like all those filled up, so that's one of the last things I'm going to end up doing to this piece. I'm actually in the process right now of looking for a matching piece of wood that I think would go pretty well back there. So with all that being said, let's take a look at what this piece used to look like. This piece looked like it really went through the ringer. There were scratches, there were gash marks, there were stains all over the place. Especially on the sill right over here. There was a ton of damage on the sill. And honestly, I was a little bit nervous that it might not come out. But luckily it did. There was lead paint covering the entirety of the inside. And there are still some flecks of paint here and there, but I think it kind of gives the piece a little bit of character and kind of tells its story in a way. This piece was a ton of work and it took about 3 weeks for me to complete. So I really hope you guys enjoy the reveal, and I apologize again if the reveal isn't really what you expected. I'm just trying my best. So without any further ado, enjoy the reveal.